I saw Cynthia Larson at the grocery store today. She told me Jack is back home to run the family business while his brother Jeff recovers from his accident, Brenda Johnson told her daughter Laura. Jack? Laura asked, suddenly determined to shove the can of peas as deep into the pantry as possible. Yes, Jack. You remember him, don't you? He's your husband, or ex-husband. I'm not sure which description is more accurate. Is he still your husband? Mom! You know I don't like to talk about my problems with Jack. I don't know if we are still married or not. I've never received any official papers or notices of divorce, Laura reluctantly admitted. You've never filed for divorce, have you? Brenda persisted. No, I haven't, Laura replied, studying her shoes. He's the one who left. I thought he was going to apply. Your situation is the strangest I've ever seen, Brenda declared. He left 6 years ago. In all that time, he's never called, emailed, or even written a letter. You can't still love him after all he's done to you. Or can you? Laura lowered her eyes again, but answered nothing. Oh, shit, her mother exclaimed. Don't tell me you're one of those women who accept violence and even think you deserve it. He abandoned you! It's his fault, Laura. A man who leaves his wife without explanation deserves no consideration. Since he's in town, divorce him. He was a great guy when you married him. In fact, he was great right up until the day he left. I liked him. He seemed responsible, considerate, hardworking, and devoted to you. And suddenly he's gone! You're still young. You need to find a good man you can rely on and create a good family. I make my own decisions, Mom. I'm 27 years old, I have a good job, and I live in my own house. I'm not a burden to you and Dad, so I would appreciate it if you would stop running my life, Laura replied. I just want you to be happy, honey. I don't think you've been happy since the day Jack left. If he loved you even a little bit, he would never have left you the way he did. He must have had a girlfriend. No! Jack would never cheat. He's not like that, was Laura's immediate response. Laura's quick and decisive response surprised her mother. Her daughter was still defending the man who had packed up and abandoned her in the middle of the night. How could she? Why would she? Laura claimed that they hadn't quarreled before Jack had left, but never told her what could have caused such an abrupt break in their relationship. Brenda was sure that Laura wasn't telling the whole truth, and it was unlikely she ever would. Laura Masterson did not sleep well that night. She tossed and turned, trying to get comfortable, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Jack in front of her. He was the most handsome man she had ever known. He was fun and calm and devoted to her. At least he had been before she'd ruined everything. Now he was back in Stone Ridge. Laura knew their paths were bound to cross someday. After all these years, she still didn't know what to say to him. And what could she say? She knew how trite an apology would seem. There were no words to adequately describe the depth of her remorse. She had ruined their relationship. They could never be the same. Her life wasn't a fairy tale. It was real, and it was disgusting. 2 days later, Laura was visiting her mother again when her younger sister Kate, a graduate student at Ohio State University, came in after work. She was a journalism major, so she had a summer job at a local media group. I saw your husband today, Laura. He came by to place some ads. Are you interested in hearing about it? Kate asked. If not her, then me, the girl's mother interjected. What did he look like? Well, if anyone was hoping he'd gone to hell, they'll be quite disappointed, Kate replied with a slight chuckle. He's probably the most handsome man I've ever seen. Really? Brenda replied, furrowing her eyebrows. Can I assume he hasn't gotten fat and lost all his hair? He was wearing a t-shirt with pockets and jeans. As far as I could tell, he looked completely ragged. Donna was doing the announcing, and I was watching and listening from the next room. He didn't see me, Kate added. Did you hear him say something? Laura asked quietly. Like how he was such a dumbass that he dumped you? No, he just gave Donna the ad and paid her. His daughter, on the other hand, is stunning. Kate's mind raced as she watched her sister's reaction. Does he have a daughter? Brenda asked as Laura sat in stunned silence. That's why he left. He got some girl pregnant. You're lucky you got rid of him, Laura. I don't think many women would feel that way seeing him in that tight shirt and jeans, Kate objected. He exudes sex appeal. Besides, his daughter looked too old to have been born after he left Stone Ridge. I think she's about 12 or 13, Kate said. How could he have a daughter 12 years old? He's only 28 years old now. He should have been 16 when he became a father. We know that didn't happen, Brenda reasoned as Laura remained silent. I heard him introduce the girl to Donna as his daughter. Her name is Kansas. She's gorgeous. She's very athletic and seems to be Daddy's little girl. Did Jack's daughter have hair as dark as his? Laura asked. She's a stunning blonde, Kate replied, watching her sister closely. Whatever her ethnicity is, it suits her very well. Oh, I just thought of something, Kate proclaimed. Since Jack is her father and you're still his wife, you must be her stepmother or something. Kate! That was just mean, Brenda scolded as Laura ran off to the bathroom. There's something weird about all of this. I have a feeling things are going to come to light very soon. Secrets don't usually last long in a small town, although this one did last 6 years. Who was that pretty girl in the other room? Kansas asked as she and Jack left the media group's office. She couldn't take her eyes off you. Remember when I told you about how I got married years ago? It was my ex-wife's sister, Kate. She's probably about 22 years old now. I think she was surprised to see me. Was your wife as beautiful as her sister? Kansas asked. She was even more beautiful, Jack replied with a small smile, remembering Laura's face. She was absolutely beautiful. Kansas studied Jack's face before he spoke. You really loved her, didn't you? Why did she cheat on you? I wouldn't have told you this if I'd known we'd be moving back to Stone Ridge, Jack allowed. Please don't tell anyone about it. If she doesn't tell you herself, no one will know why we broke up. There's no reason to hurt her now. You're something! You don't want to hurt her after what she did to you? Most guys would want to strangle her to death, but not you. She certainly ruined a good thing, but I'm glad she did it. I don't know where I'd be or who I'd be with if you hadn't moved to Thompson and started working with my dad. Yeah, at the time he didn't think it was such a good thing, but it worked out really well for me. Now I have the best daughter in the world. It makes me feel really good to tell people you're my daughter, even though Brian was your real father. We both know he was the best guy in the world, Jack said with a sad smile. He told me that I should call you Daddy if I felt comfortable. You're my dad now, and I love you like you're my real dad. You didn't have to accept me, but you did. I'm lucky we already had the same last name, Kansas admitted. We were fortunate that Brian was able to give us a heads up in time to plan. He was the one who insisted we start the adoption process. If your father had testified before he died about how he wanted me to adopt you, it would have saved us a lot of red tape. I miss him a lot, but I like being your daughter. Is that okay? Kansas asked with sudden concern. That's exactly what Brian wanted, Jack assured her. He knew he wouldn't be around to watch you grow into a beautiful and independent woman. He honored me when he asked me if I would be your father. It was an unquestionable decision. You do realize we're going to have a hard time finding a new mom for me if you're already married, Kansas remarked. Maybe we should meet Laura and ask her if she's divorced you. Let's hold off on that, Jack cautioned. When I filled out the adoption paperwork, I indicated that I was married. Social services rarely looks favorably on single men adopting beautiful young women. Let's send you to school and cement our position in society. When we're sure no one will give us any trouble, we can go to Laura to get a copy of the divorce decree. Until then, we won't be looking for a new mom, okay? Of course, Dad. I understand. I just know that all women will want to marry you. We just need to make sure we find one that's right for both you and me. Not every woman will agree to have her daughter go on dates, Kansas teased. Stop worrying about that. If a woman can't fully accept you, she won't stand a chance with me, Jack promised. You will always be my daughter. Your children will be my grandchildren. End of discussion. Kansas rushed over to Jack and hugged him tightly. Jack was well aware that the loss of her mother as an infant and her father last year had caused her great distress. He had to keep reminding her that he loved her very much and would never leave her. Jack explicitly explained to his mother what topics would be off limits when he and Kansas moved in with her. He would help run the family construction business, and would not tolerate interference in his personal affairs. His mother, Janet, readily agreed. Jack was surprised at her quick agreement, but decided not to say anything more on the subject. Jack was washing up in the bathroom when he overheard Kansas talking to his mother. "Grandma, we saw Laura's sister, Kate. She's very pretty. Do you think Laura is as pretty as her sister?" Jack had to strain to hear his mother's reply. He knew she was trying hard not to let him hear her. He made it clear that Laura, her family, and anything to do with Laura were off limits. "Honey, Laura is a beautiful woman. She was pretty when she and Jack got married, but now she's turned into a confident, capable young woman. I don't see her very often because things aren't going well with her and Jack, but she's always been very polite to me. If it were up to me, those two would still be together and give you brothers and sisters. Too bad it's not up to me. I promised I wouldn't discuss this topic, so we'd better change the subject before your father hears us," Janet concluded. "Dad drove me by the new school this afternoon," Kansas informed him as Jack entered the room and sat down at the kitchen table. "Their soccer field looks like it's in great shape. I can't wait to try out for the team. I saw online that there will be tryouts next Tuesday afternoon." "I didn't know you played soccer," Janet exclaimed, but with less enthusiasm than Jack had expected. In fact, this information seemed to worry his mom. "It's my favorite sport. I was one of the best players on the travel team when we lived in Thompson. We only lost one match," boasted Kansas. "She was far from the best player on the team," Jack remarked with a chuckle. "She's just being modest." "Sounds great," Janet praised, wondering if she should tell Jack who his coach was. She hid a chuckle at the thought of how the first practice would go and what a shock Jack would be in for. He was the one who had insisted that no one talk about Laura. She was simply complying with his unreasonable demands, and it looked like it might backfire on him. Laura listened to the mother of one of the girls as she watched the 20-something girls kick soccer balls at each other. A tall blonde girl caught her eye. Her movements were flawless. She easily guided the ball, flipping it from foot to foot, and easily flicked it past the girl who had been their best goalie last year. As soon as she was able to gracefully escape from the small talk of the chatty mother, she approached the blonde girl and watched her more closely. Sensing her presence, the girl stopped working with the ball and turned to look into Laura's eyes. "Hi, I'm the team coach," Laura began. "Everyone calls me Coach or Coach Masterson. You seem to know a lot about soccer." When Laura spoke, the girl's jaw dropped. She scrutinized Laura from head to toe before she finally spoke. "Hello, ma'am. I'm Kansas Masterson. I believe my daddy was your husband years ago. I really like soccer, but if you think I can't be treated fairly, I'll understand and try field hockey. I don't want to put you in a difficult position." By this time, all the girls had gathered closer to listen to the exchange of views. The new girl turned out to be the daughter of Mrs. Masterson's husband. Apparently, these two had never met before. Laura was caught off guard when the girl explained that she was Jack's daughter. Gathering her thoughts, she realized that she should have guessed it from the description Kate had given. The girl was very pretty and very athletic. "Kansas, as you realize, this is a bit of a surprise to me. I had no idea you were Jack's daughter. Let me assure you that your behavior on the field, diligence at practice, and ability to fit in with the team will determine your playing time. I have no reason to be unfair to you," Laura assured me. As Laura spoke, the girl scrutinized her face. She seemed to be the one to decide what their relationship would be. When Laura finished speaking, Kansas nodded her head slightly, as if in acknowledgement. "Grandma Masterson knew you were a coach. But she didn't say anything because of Daddy's rules," Kansas grinned. "I can't wait to see his face when I tell him you're my coach." "Your father isn't here, is he?" Laura asked, quickly looking around the field. "No, he's driving the backhoe this afternoon," Kansas replied. "He's been helping Uncle Jeff since the accident. But he was right about you." Kansas turned and started to walk away when Laura called her name. Kansas turned to face Laura again, but she moved closer and spoke softly in her ear. "What do you mean he was right about me? What did he say about me?" Laura waited with dread for the beauty's answer, but it had been years since she had seen Jack or heard of him. She lacked information about him. If he still hated her, she'd better find out right away. "Well, Coach," Kansas whispered, so only Laura could hear. "Daddy says you're the prettiest cheating whore he's ever seen." Laura reacted as if the blonde had punched her in the face. She gasped, fell to her knees, and burst into tears. Kansas expected to see contempt, anger, embarrassment, or a combination of those emotions. Seeing how her words devastated the woman, Kansas rethought the entire situation. She'd hated Laura Masterson ever since she'd first heard the story of how she'd cheated on Jack. In doing so, Laura had nearly destroyed him. Kansas decided that if she ever got the chance, she'd tell that whore everything she thought of her. Laura Masterson somehow didn't fit into the picture that Kansas had created. She seemed to be loved and respected by the other girls. Kansas had noticed how popular the coach had been within minutes of her arrival. Now the woman was showing real desperation over the words Kansas had said. Those were the very words she had promised herself she would use if she ever met the woman who had caused Jack such pain. Kansas took no pleasure in her revenge. She walked slowly to the bench to sit on it and wait for her inevitable dismissal. "What did you say to Coach Masterson?" demanded the woman who Kansas guessed was the team's assistant coach, who had arrived late. She flipped through the list of names on her clipboard. "What's your name?" "I'm Kansas Masterson." "I'm sorry if I caused a problem," Kansas apologized. "Masterson?" repeated the stunned woman. "Are you related to Jack Masterson?" "He's my father," Kansas stated, with what she hoped was a look of what she hoped looked like pride. "I think you'd better leave," the woman advised. "Coach Masterson is a wonderful woman. She doesn't need to be reminded every day on the soccer field about her loser husband." Kansas just nodded and turned toward the gate. She was about to leave the playground when she felt a hand on her shoulder. Kansas turned around in surprise and found herself in the arms of a sobbing Laura Masterson. "I'm so sorry, was all the woman could repeat as she snuggled against Kansas. Not knowing how to react, Kansas simply remained motionless while Laura gradually regained control of her emotions. Eventually, her sobbing stopped. The other girls gathered around again and watched mesmerized. "Your father is a fine man. Please stay and join the team," Laura instructed. "If you are like Jack, you will be a great addition. I promise I won't show so much emotion towards you again. Come back, please." Kansas found Coach Masterson leading her back to the bench. When they reached the bench, Laura turned her around to face the other girls. "It's useless to deny that I practically broke down a few minutes ago. I want you to understand why. This is Kansas Masterson. Her father is my ex-husband. Her sudden appearance has shaken me deeply. I hadn't seen her father in 6 years. And even though I knew he was back in Stone Ridge, I was still surprised to find Kansas here today. I want you all to treat Kansas kindly. She's not to blame for all this drama. It would be wrong to blame her." Looking directly at Kansas, Laura asked the question she dreaded the answer to. "Is your mom around here somewhere? I'd like to meet her and compliment her on what a wonderful daughter she has." "Mom died when I was 3, Kansas answered with some excitement. "It was just me and Daddy left. I apologize for being rude before. Daddy is punishing me for being such a witch. I'm sorry, Coach Masterson." Laura's head was spinning as she pondered Kansas's words. Her mother had died when she was 3 years old. How was that possible? It had been about 10 years ago. Jack was still in high school then. She decided that was a mystery for another time. "We started off on the wrong foot," Laura replied. "Let's start over. I'm Coach Masterson and you're Kansas. Let me tell everyone the rules and expectations of the team, and then we'll start practice." After practice was over, Kansas climbed into her grandmother's SUV to drive home. "How was your first practice, honey?" "It went pretty well," Kansas stated. "All the girls have been good to me and some of them are pretty good players. I think we're going to have a good team." "Very nice," Janet replied, and then asked about the coach. "How did you like the coach?" "I heard she was very nice." "Why don't you just ask what you really want to know, Grandma?" Kansas replied with a smile. "Good. How did you get along with Laura? Was she surprised when she found out who you were?" Janet asked. "Did you like her?" "Well, she's kinder than I thought. She's still very worried about Daddy, and it's been 6 years. Jack never told anyone why he left her. I don't know how much he told you, but they were a beautiful young couple. They seemed to love each other very much. Then one night, Jack got in his truck and drove away," Janet recalled. I don't think he ever spoke to Laura again. I heard she didn't know why Jack left. She can't blame it on Daddy, exclaimed Kansas furiously. She knows exactly why Daddy left. She drove him away. He's not the bad guy in this case. Okay, I think Jack already talked to you about that, Janet reasoned. I'm glad to hear that Jack didn't run away from Laura for no reason. Can you tell me why he left? Only Dad or Coach can explain it to you. I promised my dad I wouldn't tell anyone, Kansas replied. When Jack got home, dinner was waiting for him. After he cleaned himself up, he sat down at the table and, slicing a pork chop, asked Kansas how her soccer game had gone. It didn't start out very smoothly, Kansas admitted as she watched Janet. Coach looked upset when I told her my name. We talked for a while. Eventually, it smoothed out. Jack noticed his mother wince as Kansas briefly described her day. He knew it was a sure sign that there was more to the story. Your coach is a friend of Laura's? I should have considered that possibility. Do you think you'll get a fair evaluation? Laura Masterson is my coach, Dad. Jack was speechless for a full minute as his brain tried to comprehend the implications of Kansas's statement. He realized that he had made a mistake in not learning more about Laura's current situation. Jack's mother smiled broadly as Jack turned to look at her. She could still read her son's face and knew what conclusion he'd come to. Mom, can you tell Kansas and I more about Laura? It looks like we're going to have to talk to her regularly, Jack admitted reluctantly. It's very nice of you to ask at finally. Laura is a math teacher at Stone Ridge High School. She has been coaching soccer for 3 years. Last year, they only lost 2 games. She is still single or married to you, depending on which rumors you prefer to believe. The general consensus is that her husband ran off one dark and stormy night, probably because he had a girlfriend on the side. That's not true! Daddy never cheated. Kansas! What did I tell you about that kind of talk? Jack interrupted. I expect you to speak and act respectfully when you're around Laura. Please don't do anything that I would have to apologize to her for, Jack insisted. That would be embarrassing, to say the least. Jack noticed how red Kansas's face turned as she quickly lowered her gaze to her plate. He took a deep breath before he spoke. What did you do, Kansas? How bad was it? I may have called her a bad name, but I apologized to her, Kansas added immediately. I think we're okay now. She treated me the same way she treated the other girls during practice. What exactly did you say? Jack asked, cursing himself for telling Kansas the reason for his failed marriage. I have to whisper this to you. Grandma mustn't hear it. I know it was wrong, but it just came out. I'm sorry, Daddy. Kansas stood up, walked over to Jack and whispered in his ear. Janet couldn't hear what the girl said to Jack, but it was clear from his reaction that he wasn't happy. Kansas, I told you something in confidence and you couldn't keep it a secret, Jack complained, trying to contain his irritation. That puts me in a very uncomfortable position. I expect you to learn a lesson from that mistake. I regretted it as soon as I said it, Kansas replied crushingly. It hurt her a lot more than I expected, Kansas admitted. I forgot to tell you that she told the girls you were her ex-husband. Now we can find you a new wife. Laura was at loose ends. She struggled to act normal so she could make it through the team's training session. She was glad she lived alone as she sat in her favorite chair and cried nonstop for hours. School was still 2 weeks away, but practice for fall sports had already started. Even though she didn't have to get up early to teach lessons, she still had to get ready for soccer practice. As she drove to school the next day, she told herself that this day would be much easier. Yesterday's drama wouldn't happen again. Then she almost collided with Jack Masterson as she rushed to the back of her SUV to remove her team gear. Hi, Laura. Do you have a moment? I'd like to apologize to you. I guess, Laura replied, though the thought of Jack having to apologize to her seemed ludicrous. Is there a problem? Kansas told me what she said to you yesterday. It was wrong. I tried to raise her better. It's partly my fault. I shouldn't have told her why we broke up. She and my cousin Brian are the only 2 people I told about it, Jack assured Laura. She's young and she wanted to hurt you. Laura couldn't help but notice how great Jack looked in a simple cotton t-shirt and jeans. His stomach was flat and the muscles of his chest stretched the fabric covering it. His arms were muscular and embossed. His hair was longer than she remembered. She had to admit it looked good. His jaw was strong and his smile was infectious. He looked very masculine. She didn't say anything that wasn't true. We both know that, Jack. Unless you think I'm beautiful, that's the only thing you can argue with, Laura replied, wiping the droplets of tears from her cheeks. I don't want you to suffer now because of what happened 6 years ago, Jack replied. It's over. We've both moved on. It's time to bury the past and look forward. Over and done with? Laura repeated. Sounds pretty simple. We'll just act like we were never in love, never married, and I never had fun with that asshole. It should work out, Laura managed to say before tears ran down her cheeks. Jack wanted to take Laura in his arms and hold her to his chest, but he was afraid he'd give the wrong signal. Unable to figure out how to deal with the sobbing woman, he just stood there and watched. While he waited, he had time to study his ex-wife. Her legs were tanned and strong. Laura had braided her hair into a ponytail. It allowed Jack to see the curve of her jaw and slender neck. She was still the most beautiful woman he had ever known. Laura finally pulled herself together. She looked into Jack's eyes and said quietly, I'm sorry, Jack, for a lot of things. I was a damn fool when I slept with that asshole. I was just as stupid when I let everyone think you dumped me for no reason. I kept hoping you'd come back and forgive me. Telling people what a stupid bitch I was would only make it harder for us to reconcile. You never came back and I never told anyone the truth. You were gone and I was living here, so I took the easy way out. I let people blame you. I'm going to tell everyone the truth. You don't deserve the nasty comments or the scorn of people in the community. I forced you to leave. I know that a person like you can never accept my actions. You would never take me back. I wouldn't even take me back. I don't deserve forgiveness. Laura, I'm fine with everything. I didn't have any ill feelings about my leaving. I'm sure people naturally thought I was a jerk for leaving such a beautiful woman. They'd rather question my sanity than my character, remarked the wise Jack. You have always been a gentleman, Laura marveled, meeting his gaze. Your daughter is a delightful girl. I don't blame her for saying what she did. Please don't be too hard on her. I think she's going to be my star player. It was nice to see you and lighten the mood, Jack replied. We'll be seeing a lot of Kansas on your team. I hope we can get along without any drama. I must say, you've gotten even more beautiful than you were when we got married. Thank you, kind sir, Laura replied. You look like you've added a few pounds, mostly in your arms and chest. I never thought of you as chiseled before, but now the term fits you. Thank you for taking the time to straighten us out a bit. Jake noticed about a dozen girls standing off to the side, watching him talk to their coach. He was distracting Laura from her duties, so he nodded and walked back to his truck to leave. Was that Kansas's father? Exclaimed the red-haired girl, turning to her friends. He's just handsome. My dad is balding and has a big belly. He looks much older than Mr. Masterson. Why did Coach Masterson dump him? Wondered another girl. My mom's looking for a new husband after her divorce. Maybe I'll tell her about Kansas's dad. During soccer season, Laura was always taking her parents out to dinner. Her mom always made dinner shortly after practice was over. The night before, her mom had excused herself to make dinner because she had bridge club, but on the second night of practice, the family got together. How's the team doing? Her father asked, putting on his own potatoes. Are the girls going to perform as well as they did last year? Sounds like I'll have the best team, Laura decided, as she pondered how much she should say about Jack and Kansas. Your best player is back again, isn't he, sis? Kate asked. I know she had another year before she moved on to high school. I'm sure the team has a new top player, Laura said. You saw her the other day. You mean Jack's daughter? She plays soccer on your team? You can't make that up, Kate added with a chuckle. Tell us about her. She's obviously played a lot of soccer. She's fast, athletic, and smart. Most girls like her, Laura explained. She's also a nice girl. Wow, Kate exclaimed. How did she react to you? Did she know her stepmother was her coach? What did she say? She was as surprised as I was when we met. I told her I was Coach Masterson, and she knew right away that I was married to her dad. I think we're going to get along great. She's a really nice girl. Have you seen Jack? Janet asked. Did he have the courage to at least talk to you? I talked to Jack today before practice. We worked some things out. It wasn't as awkward as I feared, Laura admitted. What exactly did you find out? Janet asked. He apologized, not that anything he could say was a suitable explanation for leaving his wife. We had a mature conversation without throwing accusations and recriminations. Jack was a complete gentleman, Laura admitted. He even told me I was prettier than when we got married. Hallelujah, Janet intervened. It follows that you are no longer married to him. You are free to find a husband who will treat you with love and respect. I almost had it all, Mom, Laura managed as tears ran down her cheeks. I didn't deserve a good husband. I didn't keep the one I had. He's the one who got away, Laura's father remarked. I should probably go find him and kick his ass. I wouldn't advise trying it, Papa. He has the look of a man who can handle himself quite well. Did he seem torn to you, Laura? Kate asked as Laura wiped away her tears. That's an understatement. You're a big guy, Dad. I appreciate you wanting to protect me, but please don't have words with Jack. He's different now than he was when he left. He's matured. He's obviously much stronger and more confident than he was before. It was quite obvious. That's it? Janet asked. After 6 years, he comes back to town with a blonde daughter and doesn't explain himself to the wife he left? How did you keep from punching him in the face? Mom, it never occurred to Sis to slap the guy. She's still in love with him. Look at her. I can't explain it, but she loves him more today than the day he left, Kate stated. I'm just a stupid bitch. Come on, say it, Laura sobbed. I've ruined the best thing I ever had. I deserve to be laughed at and worse. Sis! You're not stupid, Kate replied crushingly. I don't know what happened between you two, but if you still love that jerk, I'm on your side. I'll help in any way I can. I want to see you happy again. There's nothing anyone can do. He divorced me. We'll never be together. Helping me accept that it's over is the best thing you can do for me. Kate just hugged her sister. She didn't say anything else, but decided that she would talk to Jack and find out why he had left her sister and see if they had a chance to be together again. The next morning, Jack was just about to give orders to his men when Kate Johnson walked into the building. The men knew enough about Jack's history with her sister Laura to remain silent as Kate approached him. What can I do for you, Kate? Jack asked in a professional tone. I want to treat you to lunch at Ellie's tonight. Meet me there at noon? Jack had no choice but to agree. He would never refuse a lady such a request in the presence of others. In fact, he had always liked Kate, and he didn't mind having dinner with an attractive young woman. Kate was already sitting in the stall when Jack walked in. She stood up and hugged him tightly. Thanks for coming in, Jack. You look great. You have become a very beautiful woman, Kate. It's good for my ego to be seen with you, Jack replied calmly. You've always been a gentleman. How about we place an order and then we can catch up? I have a lot of questions, Kate admitted. The first one is what you did to get so pumped up. Once they had ordered, Jack began answering Kate's many questions. When I left Stone Ridge, I visited my father's cousin's son, Brian Masterson. We had only met a few times, but we chatted on Facebook and he was always friendly. Brian was 10 years older than me. His wife, Anna, had died a few years earlier due to a botched medical procedure. Kansas was 7 years old when I first met her. Unfortunately, a little over 18 months ago, her father was diagnosed with testicular cancer. He and I had become close. He saw how I felt about Kansas, so when he found out he was dying, he decided to help me legally adopt her. It wasn't easy, but we finalized everything just before he passed away almost a year ago, Jack sadly stated. Oh, Jack, that must have been a very hard experience for you. I can't imagine how Kansas handled it. I saw you in our office the other day and she's a terrific girl. You can see that she really liked you. It amazes me that a single man was allowed to adopt a teenage girl. I've heard horror stories about how difficult these adoptions are. Between you and me, I didn't know that Laura had actually divorced me, so I indicated on the paperwork that I was married. I genuinely thought I was. Kansas is my life now. I can't imagine not having her with me. She still worries about adoption. She knows how closely the authorities watch single men who adopt girls. She wants to help me find a wife as soon as possible, but what she really wants is a mom. Kate knew that Laura thought Jack had divorced her. Now Jack was telling her that he thought Laura had divorced him. Kate put that information aside, figuring it might come in handy someday. That brings me to one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, Jack, Kate cut to the chase. You've seen Laura. You know how beautiful she is. She graduated from college and got her teaching degree. 2 years ago, she bought a small ranch. The kids at school adore her. I don't think she's been seeing anyone since you left. Is there any chance of you two getting back together? You were the perfect couple, Kate stated with conviction. I'm sorry, Kate. That's not going to happen. We're very different people now than we were when we got married. We've gone our separate ways. There's nothing left between us, Jack replied. You've both changed, but for the better, at least in my opinion, Kate argued. I'm sure she still loves you, Jack. What happened to make you leave? She must have told you something about it, Jack reasoned. She said it was my fault? Not once. She said you didn't agree on something with her and you left. She kept waiting for you to come back, Kate added. Well, now I'm back, Jack offered with a faint smirk. It just took me 6 years to do it. What have you been doing while you've been away? You've obviously gained weight and it's all muscle, Kate remarked, looking at Jack's arms and chest. Brian bought a large warehouse during the last recession. Anna had a dance studio in one of his sections. Brian built a gym and then added a dojo. 2 years ago, we started holding yoga classes in the upstairs room. You probably won't believe this, but I became a yoga instructor, personal trainer, and weekend sensei for teens. When you left, you were only a semester away from getting your degree. Did you ever keep doing it? Kate asked. Yes, I took night classes. I even have a teaching certificate. It looked good when I taught martial arts and yoga. Brian and I both had degrees. I think it helped us seem more legitimate. Saying goodbye, Kate hugged Jack again. I really enjoyed our lunch. I'm sorry you're so determined to go back to Laura, but I hope we can remain friends. I'd love to, Jack replied. I always need friends. Say hello to your folks for me. Huh, Jack? I'd advise you to avoid them. They're not very happy with the way your relationship with Laura has turned out, Kate advised. That's not surprising, Jack replied with a chuckle. Your ancestors have always been loyal to you girls. I don't blame them for disliking me. In fact, I'd be shocked if they didn't love me. The next morning, Laura felt better than ever. She hadn't realized how guilt and anxiety had defined her life for the past 6 years. She had made peace with Jack and with herself. She wished desperately that she had never cheated on him and that Jack still loved her, but she had to face reality and make the best of it. When Laura approached the practice field in the afternoon, she saw Kansas doing some stretching exercises and the other girls watching her. Soon they joined Kansas, or at least tried to. How can you bend over like that and keep your balance? One girl asked after she fell to the ground. It seems like you're defying gravity. My dad helped me learn my stretching regimen. It's borrowed from both yoga and martial arts. He could teach you, but I can't. I don't know where to start. I can do stretching, but I don't know exactly how I got to this point, Kansas admitted. You, Dad, can you do those stretches? An incredulous friend asked. I thought men couldn't bend as well as women, especially guys with muscles like your dad's. They can do it if they work at it, but most men don't want to put in the effort it requires. They prefer to do martial arts where they can punch and block, Kansas replied. Most of Dad's physique was derived from yoga. Maybe he can show us how to do those stretches, another girl suggested. I know he's working, but maybe after practice we could stay longer to learn. I don't know if Dad has the time. Besides, I don't think Coach would agree to that. She might think Daddy is meddling in her team's affairs. He's very careful when dealing with underage girls. There has always been at least one adult present during the kids' sessions. Kansas, if Jack wants to show these girls how to do stretches, I'll gladly stay and chaperone, Laura interjected. I can so see the other teams watching you girls do the stretches, Kansas. We'll be in their heads before the match even starts, Jack was surprised when he picked up Kansas the evening after practice. All the girls on the team, as well as Laura and several mothers, greeted him. "Dad, the other girls have seen me do pre-match stretching and want to learn how to do it. I kind of told them that you're a yoga instructor and might want to practice with us after practice for a half hour or so." Laura watched Jack's face soften as he listened to Kansas. He couldn't hide a smile as he listened to his daughter. She felt a pang of jealousy over the obvious love he felt for her. "I guess you can, but I need at least one adult present at all times." "That's out of the question," Jack insisted. "Kansas told us you need an adult. I already promised the girls that I would chaperone the instruction." "It's okay if I practice with the girls," Laura asked. "Some of us moms would like to take advantage of the situation, if you don't mind." "I doubt I'll ever be able to do what Kansas does, but I could use any improvement," stated a slightly overweight woman with red hair. "We'll start tomorrow. I will bring a change of clothes with me. I suggest you all dress appropriately for yoga. I will be teaching a class for the girls. They are young and athletic, so they will probably progress faster. The moms shouldn't be upset if the kids start faster," Jack warned. Jack never once managed to stray from yoga instruction for less than an hour. The girls were already athletic and practiced hard to gain the grace and strength that Kansas displayed. 3 single moms were faithfully showing up to class. Laura had no doubt why they were so interested. Low-cut tops and tight yoga pants created a look that few could ignore. For his part, Jack liked working with the girls. He learned their names. He knew many of their families, since he himself had grown up in Stone Ridge. It pleased him how seriously they took his instructions. Laura was very different. She always dressed more conservatively than her 3 mothers, but she looked amazing. She was very trim and surprisingly strong. She could master many positions as well as the girls, and some even better. She was never pushy or apologetic. She was always friendly, yet professional. Before the 3rd game against a local rival, the girls began doing pre-match stretching. Kansas brought out a Bluetooth speaker and played music while she led her team's practice. Players and fans from the other school stopped and watched in obvious amazement. The girls were happy that their performance brought the desired result. They had a solid victory over their opponent. After the game, Kansas approached Laura as her teammates clustered around her. "Coach, have you ever thought about entering Harper's soccer tournament?" Kansas began. "There are different age groups competing there. Our team fits perfectly in the 12-14 group. I think we could win it or at least perform well. I know about this tournament. Other coaches have mentioned it at seminars and practices," Laura admitted. "I understand the teams are made up of the best players from several schools. The competition is intense. There's also the issue of the entry fee. I think it's $500 per team, with the proceeds going to benefit the women's shelter in Harper. I'm sure the school board would never approve such an expense. Would you agree to coach us if we performed independently of the school and the entry fee was donated by a local business?" a very serious Kansas asked. Laura looked at Kansas, then at the other girls. It was obvious they wanted to get to the tournament and wanted her to be their coach. "You do realize that the opponents will be much tougher than the ones we play in our league, right? Every game will be practically against an all-star team," Laura remarked. "Coach, I played in this tournament last year," Kansas states. "I was on the travel team. We won 2 games and they were unbelievable. In the 3rd game, we lost by 1 goal to a team that ended up winning the tournament. I know our team is good enough to play them. We just need a good coach to make it work." "It sounds like you've already looked into the matter." "You said you already have a sponsor?" Laura asked. "Yes, I've already talked to local businesses about it. They're willing to pay the entry fee and motel rooms for the whole team and coaches. It's going to be over the Columbus Day long weekend. The championship game is on Monday, so we'll be there for 3 nights. After listening to Kansas's arguments, Laura felt her appreciation and even admiration for this lovely blonde grow. She was planning to play in the finals! Laura felt immense pride in the group of girls in front of her. They just didn't have the horses to play with the level of competition they could face, but Laura would never say that to her girls. "Let's do it," Laura agreed enthusiastically. "There's no better way to improve than to play against the best. Tell me what needs to be done and I'll do it." "Thank you, Coach," the excited girls shouted in one voice. "Here's the site. I've written down your username and password. You have to go to the site and claim us before midnight. They need one more team for a total of 16 people, which is perfect for a single elimination tournament, Kansas explained. The entry fee has already been paid. Wow, you've got it under control, Laura replied with a chuckle. Our team is called the Ridge Runners, Kansas said. We will have t-shirts with our names on the back and the team name on the front. It's going to be a lot of fun. Jack is sponsoring a team? Laura asked once she was alone with Kansas. Our sponsor prefers to remain anonymous, Kansas replied with a broad smile. I can give you a clue. Our sponsor has insisted that you agree to coach us or the deal is off. For some reason, our sponsor believes you are an excellent coach and a role model for us impressionable girls. Then Jack will stay away, won't he? Laura joked. Don't underestimate Dad, Kansas cautioned. He keeps a close eye on everything. He wants the best for me and for the whole team. Less than 2 weeks later, Kansas was leading their team warming up on a sunny Saturday morning in preparation for their first game. A surprisingly large number of people traveled from Stone Ridge to support the team. Jack cheered as he watched Kansas maintain the smiles and laughter of the girls as they prepared for their first match. He noticed that the other team was watching the warm-ups closely. By now, the girls could perform stretches and poses more or less coherently, and it was impressive. The match started with the other team scoring a goal within a minute of play. 2 minutes later, the same girl scored again. Laura was concerned about her team's ability to come back from the loss. They hadn't lost a game all season and had won 6. A short time later, play stopped as an opposing player was helped off the field with a sprained ankle. Laura pulled Kansas off the field and sent in a substitute. Do you see what's going on out there? We have to stop that girl from scoring! She's making plays all over the field. I want her to be pressured when she gets to the ball. Make sure the girls know to run after her. I think she's their best player. We're going to stop her and we can win. After that, the Ridge Runners settled down. They managed to keep the other team's best player from putting a decent shot on goal. The half ended with a 2-goal difference. Girls, you all know how I try to emphasize team play. They know that Kansas is our top scorer and they chased her all half of the game, Laura noted. We really need the rest of you to step up. When Kansas goes to one side, pass the ball to the other side. They are totally focused on Kansas. Put some strong shots on goal. Their goalie only had to kick a few marshmallows. Make her work! The Ridge Runners came out for the second half with a much more aggressive attitude. The girls started firing at the goalie and scored twice with follow-up shots off rebounds after the goalie made a save. With under a minute left in the game, Kansas scored their first goal of the game to give the Ridge Runners a 1-goal lead. That was the last goal of the game. The Ridge Runners advanced to the next round. The girls were ecstatic. They hugged each other and Laura and then hugged their fans. Laura saw Jack enclose Kansas in a bear hug. As he lowered Kansas to the ground, one of the team moms hugged him and kissed him hard on the cheek. Laura was a little upset, but realized she had nothing to complain about. She turned to go to one of her parents when she felt strong arms wrap around her. Suddenly, she was in Jack's arms. It had been almost 7 years since she had enjoyed this simple pleasure. The Jack she was now snuggled up to was like steel. She was no small woman, but Jack had no trouble sweeping her off her feet. That was a great coaching job, praised Jack. Kansas told me you did a good job. Thanks for that and for treating the girls so well. Thank you for sponsoring us and getting us rooms, Laura replied as Jack hugged her. Some girls could never afford the trip in the rooms. It was very generous of you. I'd do anything to make Kansas happy, Jack admitted. I never knew how deeply a man could feel for his daughter. She makes me feel alive. She wanted the other girls to have that experience. She enjoyed it last year and feels this team is better. She also thinks you are a much better coach, Jack added. Dad! Kansas shrieked. You've got a death grip on our coach. If you don't want me to start calling her Coach Mom, you should probably put her down on the ground so the rest of us can hug her. Oh! I'm sorry, Laura, Jack apologized, gently bringing Laura back to her feet. I got a little carried away. I don't think she minded much, Kansas pointed out as Laura blushed. You know you already have a room. I understand her mother had the same sense of humor, Jack explained, turning to look at Kansas. The whole team and most of the fans stayed behind to watch the next game. The next day, they were to face the winner of that game. Laura wanted her children to learn as much as they could about their style of play. She knew they would have to give it their best to have any chance of winning. The next morning, Kansas shined, leading her team to a 5-3 victory. She scored 3 of her team's goals. The other team could not contain her speed and precise footwork. The win allowed the Ridge Runners to advance to the semifinals, which took place in the afternoon. As it turned out, the semifinal game was against a travel team that Kansas had played last year. Before the game, Kansas spoke briefly with the girls from the other team. It was obvious to the Ridge Runners and their fans that Kansas really liked her former teammates. It was also noticeable that Jack Masterson was popular with the team members, as well as the adults who supported the team, especially the mothers. The field only had bleachers on one side of the field, so fans of both teams were scattered everywhere. Several moms took the time to give Jack a hug and wish him well. By the end of the game, Laura and the others had seen a different side of Jack's nature. The tournament was a fundraiser. The referees were always local high school girls who played soccer for their school. Parents and coaches realized that although the girls were getting some reward for their efforts, they were far from professionals. The game was tied when one of the umpires kicked the ball out of bounds and mistakenly gave it to the opposing Ridge Runners to put into play. A large man in his 30s suddenly stepped onto the playing field. Play stopped as the man was loudly berating the girl. Both teams watched in stunned amazement as the man continued to shout threats and obscenities at the teenage girl who had made the wrong choice. Laura was already heading toward the man when she saw the poor girl suddenly burst into tears, run a few feet to the sideline, and hug Jack. Jack held her to his chest as the girl sobbed uncontrollably. At that moment, the woman on the bleachers made a statement that was heard by everyone present. "Jack Masterson is going to kick this guy's ass." Apparently, the rough man heard the statement as well. He stepped closer and turned to Jack. "I may have gotten a little carried away. I didn't mean anything by it." "Apologize to Macy and then get out of here," Jack growled, patting the girl on the back. "These kids are doing a great job. They deserve our thanks and appreciation. They sure don't need some damn bully humiliating them." The man pondered Jack's words, and then a woman's voice came from the bleachers again. "You better take Jack up on his offer, asshole. He's close to beating you like a rented mule." Laura managed to find the woman who had such faith in Jack's ability to handle a large man. She was a short blonde woman in her 40s, dressed in jeans and a cotton shirt. Laura realized that she had earlier seen this woman offer a drink to the girl clinging so desperately to Jack. She was probably the girl's mother. The big man made a decision. "I apologize, miss. I overreacted. You girls are doing a great job of judging." With those words, the man turned and headed toward the parking lot. Everyone watched as the girl in Jack's arms gradually came to her senses. Jack found a napkin in his pocket and held it out to her. The girl smiled at him, wiped her eyes, and stood on tiptoe and kissed Jack on the cheek. "Thank you, Jack." "I knew you'd stop that awful man," the girl praised. "Mom was right when she said you were ready to kick his ass. I could feel how tense you were. I'm just glad he didn't make you." The girl turned and trotted back onto the field while fans and players clapped and cheered her on. As soon as the applause stopped, the officials gathered to discuss how much time remained and who would have possession of the ball when play resumed. "Macy went to Jack's dojo last year," her mom explained, correctly understanding the questioning looks from other fans. "She thinks Jack hung the moon, and I can't argue with that. No one can insult a woman when Jack is around. He just won't let that happen. Rick Jefferson is a pretty big guy. He's known to be willing to fight. I was afraid he would hurt Jack," stated the mother of one of the Ridge Runners. "Jack Masterson?" Macy's mom asked in surprise. "Have you ever seen him compete?" "I mean, Jack would kick that guy's ass." Play finally resumed when the referees, with the help of the adults running the tournament, sorted out the situation. With less than a minute left in the game, Kansas quickly gained possession of the ball and gave a long pass to a teammate rushing down the sideline. The girl drove the ball into the corner of the goal, scoring what turned out to be the winning goal. When the game was over, Kansas hugged most of the members of the losing team. Jack was very proud of her sportsmanship. Macy's mother walked over to Jack and hugged him as tightly as her daughter had. "Macy knew she could count on you. She really does look up to you, Jack. Her grades in school have improved, and she's going to go to a state college next fall. She wants to be a teacher. You really set her on the right path last year. Why did Rick Jefferson end up here? Asked one of the fathers of Runner's Backbone. Sarah is his niece. She's the one who scored the winning goal, the man's wife replied. She must be very embarrassed. The championship game was scheduled for the next morning. It was Columbus Day and schools were closed due to the holiday. An awards ceremony was scheduled to be held immediately after the game. The Ridge Runners easily defeated the 3 teams they faced to reach the finals. The team was very talented and well prepared. Stone Ridge fans watched their girls raise their level of play at a very fast pace. With less than 3 minutes left in the game, a Kansas teammate was able to deflect a pass from the other team. Kansas broke into the game, outran everyone, and shot the ball past the goalie's outstretched arms to tie the game. Stone Ridge fans cheered Kansas's effort. Their cheers echoed around the field. The other team simply took their positions and prepared to continue the game. The Ridge Runners gave it their all, but their opponent proved to be very talented as they managed to score with just a few seconds to go. For the remaining time, the Ridge Runners were unable to mount an offense and lost by a 1-goal margin. Laura watched with pride as her girls hugged and congratulated each other and the winning team. Parents and supporters of the girls came out onto the field to express their pride in their children's efforts. The awards ceremony was only minutes away. Ridge Runners players and fans gave a long and loud applause when Laura came on stage to accept the second-place trophy. The top player from the winning team received the tournament MVP award. Kansas was called to the stage to present the sportsmanship trophy, which she proudly displayed to her team and fans, holding it above her head and smiling broadly. When the ceremony was over and Kansas accepted Jack's congratulations, she asked if she could ride home in the van with a few other girls. After talking to her parents and making sure they had room and were responsible drivers, Jack agreed to her request. As he watched the van Kansas was riding and pull out of the parking lot, Jack felt his hand being taken. She's a delightful girl, Jack. You're doing a great job with her. Laura saw Jack watching Kansas leave and decided to talk to him. She thought that even if they were divorced, they should be able to have polite conversations. At least Jack seemed to have forgiven her enough for that. I have no idea how to raise a daughter, Jack admitted. Women are a complete mystery to me. You've proven that. Jack's remark hurt Laura, but she didn't let him realize it. Jack, I was wrong. I have no defense or excuse. You were right to leave me. I know that. All I can ask is that we can talk to each other from time to time without insults and anger. You're right, Laura. I have no reason to dig into the past. You've done a great job coaching the girls. Kansas thinks your grades are high. She knows you could have been petty and made her presence on the team unbearable, but you didn't. We both thank you for that. I may have been a stupid bitch when we got married, but I don't think I was ever a vindictive bitch, Laura stated calmly. I really like Kansas, and I hope to be friends with her after soccer season is over if you'll let me. If you're afraid my lack of common sense and morals will be passed on to her and you don't want me hanging out with her, I understand. I wish you would continue to be interested in her, Jack replied. I wasn't trying to imply that you're not a good person. She needs some adult role models. You know I'm not fit to be a teenage girl, Laura replied. You seem to be just that. Everything I've seen and heard about you is good, Jack stated. You forgot to add the qualifier since you've been back at Stone Ridge. We both know you saw and heard something before you left that made me look bad, to say the least. I like to think I've learned from my mistakes. Your mom and dad are looking at us, Jack remarked. They look like the cat pooped in their oatmeal. Yeah, it's on my conscience. I just couldn't tell them why you left, Laura admitted. Naturally, they blame you. They're good parents, Jack replied. I wish you'd never told them. It wouldn't do you or them any good. Have a safe trip and thank you for talking to me. I've finally mastered my feelings of guilt and remorse. You're a good man, Jack. A few minutes later, Laura headed home. Her parents were participating in a 3-day tournament and were returning with her. Laura was not surprised when her mother began to question her. So what did you and Jack talk about? Brenda asked. Family, Laura replied. I complimented him on what a great job he's doing raising Kansas. He tried to brush off the praise. He told me what great parents I have. Did he say that before or after he saw us shooting daggers at him? Janet asked. Really? It was after he saw you looking at him, Laura replied. He's not stupid. He understands why you dislike him. He seems to think it's to your honor. I don't see how he can be so damned reasonable about anything except honoring his marriage, Laura's father grumbled. 3 days later, Laura sat down to dinner with her family in a depressed state. Kate immediately noticed that Laura was in a bad mood. What's wrong, sis? You look depressed. Is it that obvious? Sarah Jefferson came up to me after practice. She said her Uncle Rick has a friend who works in the county where Jack used to live. Apparently, when Jack adopted Kansas, he claimed he was still married to me. Single men have a hard time adopting teenage girls. Rick was furious about what happened at the tournament and denounced Jack. He said Jack lied on the paperwork and questioned whether he was a fit parent. There will be an investigation and Jack could lose Kansas. Sarah said that Kansas cried when she told her about it. I know Jack. He won't give up on Kansas. He'll leave the country with her before he lets anyone separate them, Laura stated. He likes to run away when faced with a problem, Laura's father allowed. Laura, you're still married to him, Kate announced. He told me he thinks you divorced him. You think he divorced you? None of you idiots have thought of that. Divorces are filed and people get notices. You're just as married today as you were the day you walked out of the church after the ceremony. I don't see what difference it makes, Brenda brushed it off. He's still living as a single man with an adopted daughter, even though he lives with his mother. That's not exactly what he said. Laura, you need to call Jack. He and Kansas can move in with you and be the family he promised the court, Kate exclaimed. I won't stand for it, Brenda declared. You don't know him anymore. He could be aggressive or violent. Putting Laura in danger is not the answer. Mom, Jack isn't cruel. He would never hurt me, Laura insisted. I'll go to him right now. Jack sat at the kitchen table. A sobbing Kansas sat on his lap and cried into his shirt while his very distraught mother watched on. The doorbell rang and Janet hurried to answer it. Jack? Can I talk to you in Kansas? Came Laura's voice from the doorway. Now is not a good time, Laura. Kansas and I are going on a trip and we need to pack. I'll have Kansas call you from the road, okay? You won't have to pack. Or rather, you will have to pack, but not for a long trip, Laura said softly. Please don't, Jack replied impatiently. This doesn't concern you except for your soccer team, and that's way down the list of things I'm worried about. Jack, she's my daughter too. Kansas stopped sobbing and turned her red eyes to Laura. Janet gasped at Laura's statement. She immediately sank back in her chair and stared at Laura. If you're trying to take Kansas away from me, you're in for one hell of a fight, Jack growled. You have no right to call her your daughter. Jack, I'm still your wife. The adoption papers say I'm her mother. I'm sure some of the papers have my signature on them. I want you and Kansas to move in with me. If you're under investigation, it'll be just like you told them. That will solve the problem, exclaimed a hopeful Janet. You and Kansas would still live in town. Kansas would still go to the same school with her friends, and you could still help Jeff with the business. That might have worked until Laura decided she'd had enough of us, Jack remarked. She can kick us out anytime she gets in her head. If I leave the toilet seat up, she might throw me out. I can't risk Kansas getting hurt like that. Jack Masterson. You know damn well I wouldn't do that. I screwed up once. I admit it, but that doesn't define me as the man I am now. I'll put your name on the contract. Hell, I'll let you pay the damn mortgage if it makes you feel better. I love Kansas like a daughter. I'd be honored to be her mother. Dad? Can we try? Kansas pleaded. Coach is a very nice person. She won't do anything bad to me or you. What are your options, Jack? Flee to some country with no extradition? How does that work for most people? This isn't a movie. This is reality. You have a chance to give Kansas a stable home life and a chance to go to a good school with her friends. Do what's best for her, even if the mere thought of having me around makes you sick, Laura insisted. Jack fell silent, thinking about the situation. When he came to a decision, he looked around. The three women were staring at him intently. "Okay," was all he said. The three females squealed with delight. Kansas jumped up and rushed over to Laura. Jack watched as they hugged tightly. Laura kissed the girl's forehead. He looked at the mother. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. Jack wiped his eyes with the back of his hand and stood up. "I hate to interrupt this celebration of love, but I think it's time for us to move. We don't know when the official guests will be coming over, or if they will come at all," Jack announced. "We need to see your house and decide how things will work." "Of course," Laura agreed. "Why don't you follow me to my house right now so we can determine what we need?" "Can I go with Mom?" Kansas asked. "Mom?" Jack repeated. "Of course. Why do I feel like I've lost control?" "You only have 2 bedrooms," Jack remarked, looking around Laura's small ranch house. "I don't see how it can work." "It's simple math," Kansas replied with a sly grin. 2 people share a room and one gets a room to himself. "I'm not going to share a room with you, Kansas," Jack stated emphatically. "Of course not," Kansas agreed. "I'm not your wife. I'm a teenage girl and I need my own room. You two are married, so cohabitation shouldn't be a problem." "We started this charade to prove that we're a normal family," Jack replied. "Sleeping with Laura goes beyond a charade." "Sleeping with her, but sleeping only with her would still be a charade," Kansas teased. "Is it really that hard?" "I'm standing right here," Laura interrupted. "Kansas should have his own room. Jack, you and I can share my bedroom. I have a double bed, so you can keep your honor intact. I'll even give you 2 drawers and some space in my closet." Jack and Kansas moved into the house before 11 o'clock at night. Laura was moved to tears when Kansas asked her a question before bedtime. "Is it okay if I call you Mom?" "If it becomes a habit with me, it will seem natural if someone comes here to check on us," Kansas reasoned. "If it bothers you, I won't do it." "Honey, nothing will make me happier," Laura whispered as tears came to her eyes. "What about school?" "What do I call you there?" Kansas inquired. "I'm going to be your mom anyway, so it'll be okay," Laura replied. "I don't think that's a good idea," Jack cautioned. "We don't want to suddenly start acting different. We're trying to show that we've been a family for a long time. If Kansas called you coaches last week, I think she should continue to do that. I'll be the only one going home with my mom after practice, helping her cook dinner and cleaning the house," Kansas promised. "I can't wait to be a part of a real family." Jack was about to warn Kansas not to go too far in family matters when Laura caught his eye. She shook her head almost imperceptibly, but Jack caught the meaning. Laura lay in bed watching Jack as he came out of the bathroom and cautiously climbed under the covers. "You sleep in your pajamas now?" "You used to always sleep naked." "I try to be a gentleman. Since Kansas started living with me, I have a pair of pajamas to wear when I get up," Jack explained. "I won't call the police if you accidentally put your arm around me or squeeze me in the middle of the night," Laura replied. "I know I seem repulsive to you now, but if you forget who I am in your sleep and act accordingly, I won't complain." "Thank you, Laura." "It's hardly a problem," Jack assured her, turned onto his back and fell asleep in a surprisingly short time. Jack was an early riser. His internal clock woke him up at 5 in the morning. He noted that he was still lying on his side of the bed, so she must have moved overnight. The next evening after soccer practice, Laura stopped by her mother's house. Kansas walked through the door following her and stood before Brenda. "Your daughter is my mom now. Is it okay if I call you Grandma?" Brenda was determined to show Laura and Kansas her disapproval of the whole charade, but her resolve dissolved when Kansas made his request. "Of course you can," Brenda exclaimed, gently hugging the girl. "Would you like some milk and cookies?" "I just made some." "So Mom's heart has melted already?" Kate joked, walking into the kitchen and hugging Kansas. "I'm your Aunt Kate and you're my favorite niece, Kansas. We're going to have so much fun." "I'm getting a new grandmother and aunt," Kansas replied with a huge smile. "Hopefully we'll get to spend more time with all of you. Dad knows Grandma doesn't like him very much, so we'll have to get together when he's working." "Well, I really like your dad," Kate replied. "He's just a handsome man." How do he and your sister get along? Okay, I guess. They spent half an hour working out their rules of behavior in the bedroom. Guess I don't exactly have a normal family, at least not yet, Kansas added meaningfully. Ah! Do you think there's a chance? Kate asked. Well, Daddy's quite the red-skinned man. Mom looks like a mannequin, only with more curves, so I don't think he has much of a chance, Kansas admitted, as Laura blushed thickly. You're not thinking of going back to Jack for good, are you? Brenda demanded. That's not the point, is it? Mom, I came by to inquire about some of your recipes, not to give you a lecture on how to handle your husband and daughter, Laura immediately objected. I don't know how things will turn out. Jack doesn't really like me right now, so you can take comfort in that. Jack entered Laura's house shortly after she and Kansas had started dinner. He looked around and then went out the back door with a notebook and measuring tape. Once dinner was over, Jack talked about what was on his mind. Laura, I want to make an addition to this house. I was thinking we could do another 26 feet by 14 feet. That would give you a large bedroom with a large bath and a huge walk-in closet, as well as a half bath for guests. Can I show you what I'm thinking? That sounds great, Jack, but I can't afford it, so there's no point in even discussing it. I've had trouble with my mortgage several times already, Laura replied. I'm willing to pay for a refill if you'll let me, Jack said. You're making a huge sacrifice for Kansas and me. I'll feel much better if you'll let me do it. It will increase your capital and give us a lot more room. Is sleeping with me really that bad? Laura asked, trying to keep her composure. Does just looking at me make you sick? No, it's not that. We don't need to cramp up like this. We'll still live in the master bedroom, but we'll be much more comfortable and we'll have more closet space, Jack said. I'll agree to this if you promise to sleep with me the whole time we live together, Laura demanded. Agree or leave? Jack looked at Laura's jaw and realized she was being serious. Glancing at Kansas, he saw that she was making a weak attempt to hide a smirk. Shrugging, Jack said to both women, "We have a deal." The soccer team remained undefeated in the league. As the season was coming to an end, Jack overheard Laura talking to Kansas about volleyball. By the end of the conversation, Laura had a new recruit for the team. Jack couldn't help but notice how close Kansas and Laura had become. They joked around, went shopping, cooked meals, and played team sports together. Kansas was as happy as he had ever seen her. His relationship with Laura was complicated. Laura respected his boundaries and remained friendly, but not romantic or intrusive. She never expressed negativity about the work that was being done on her house. The first week after moving in, Jack brought a backhoe to the site. Living in a mild climate allowed work to continue until late fall. The house was scheduled to be completed by Christmas. Kansas and Laura were excited about the expansion and the fact that they would each have more closet space. Kansas was going to move into Laura's old bedroom. That way she would have a separate bathroom and a large enough closet for clothes and accessories. Jack and Laura often discussed how they would respond to any agency that came to their home with questions about Kansas and the family arrangement. They developed a plan that they both strongly supported. As time went on, they began to wonder if anyone was even going to interview them, or if it was all too overblown in their imaginations. The sleeping arrangements remained the same. Neither Laura nor Jack ever went to bed without pajamas. Jack stopped worrying about waking up to one or both of Laura's breasts being in his clutches, or him pressing himself against her. She'd never mentioned it, so he figured it wasn't a problem. He was lying in bed one night thinking about the proposal he was about to make when he felt Laura tense up. He was surprised when she reached out and placed her hand on his chest. She let out a satisfied sigh and fell into a deep sleep. 2 days before Thanksgiving, Laura and Kansas came home from school and caught Jack in the driveway in deep conversation with the blonde. They continued to talk as Laura pulled into the garage. A few minutes later, Jack walked into the house. Kansas was in her room and Jack walked over to Laura. "That was Beth Harding," Jack remarked casually, watching Laura's reaction. Laura tensed, leaning over the sink. Jack saw her flinch as she whispered the question. "What did she want, Jack? Was she angry? What did she say to you?" "Her husband, Chuck, has a brain tumor. He's dying and she asked if I would visit him," Jack revealed. "Don't do it! He wants to rub your nose in it. He wants to hurt you, Jack. Don't let him. Please don't let him," Laura begged. I told her I would, even if it was just to watch him die, Jack replied. I'd like to hear what he has to say. He'll say I'm a whore. He'll get into my pants effortlessly. He'll probably try to say it wasn't just the one time you caught us, that I'm a bad lay and laugh in your face. He's mean. It's my fault. I should have known better, but if he was a real man, he would never go after a married woman, Laura reasoned. Why did you sleep with him then? You didn't look like a woman in a lot of pain that night, Jack recalled. In fact, you kept repeating his name over and over and saying how good he was. I was crushed. I thought about killing you both, but I decided it was better to just walk out the back door and drive away. I don't know why I did it, Laura sobbed. He was the big man on campus. He was a senior and I was a sophomore. He was a soccer star and I was just a wife, a married woman who was unavailable to most men, but not to him. He was good to me. I knew what he wanted, and for some damn foolish reason I figured I could take him on and you'd never know. It was my only affair. I ruined my life. I lost what I loved because I was young and stupid. I never blamed you for leaving. When I found your ring on the kitchen table, I knew it was over, that you must have come home and seen me with it. Now I'm living in a hell of my own making. I love Kansas, but we're not family, not really. I can't make it up to you. I know that. We will never have the love that binds us together, like a family should. It's completely my fault, and I live with that knowledge every day. Why didn't you tell me you weren't happy or wanted to try other men? Jack asked softly. I didn't want to try other men. I just wanted to feel like something special for one night. The high school stud wanted me. The irony is how much smarter I became after you left. You became better looking, kinder, completely devoted to me. You became a better man in every way that mattered. Believe it or not, that was the last time I had sex, Laura declared. You are still the only man who has ever made love to me. I guess I can be grateful to you for that. I now know the difference between love and sex, and it's huge. I don't think I'll ever forget the time I rushed home from that seminar to spend the night making love and found that someone had taken my place, Jack replied glumly. You almost killed me, Laura. I was willing to give my life for you, and you almost took it. Just because you apologize doesn't make up for the pain I've endured for 6 years. I know that, Jack. I really do. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. You're not the kind of man to overlook the tremendous disrespect I've shown you, Laura reasoned. I too have suffered for my stupidity. I'm in a sham marriage to a wonderful man and a beautiful daughter. Think how painful it is to realize that I had it all and squandered it all. Every time I look at you or Kansas, I am reminded of how stupid I was. Over time, the pain has not lessened. In fact, it has gotten worse as my love for you and Kansas has grown. You can never love me again, and I can't be a Kansas mother if you don't. I realize that. I'm just trying to enjoy every day we spend together. I know it's going to end, and probably soon, Laura admitted. Every night when we go to bed, I lie there and hope that you will run your hands over me, kiss me, make love to me, but it never happens. It's not hard for you to resist me, Laura sadly stated. You just put up with me. It's my fault. Most men wouldn't resist me so easily, but the one I want shows no interest. Karma's a bitch. In early December, Jack walked into a local hospital and asked to see Chuck Harding. He was not prepared for what he saw when he entered the man's room. The man lying on the bed looked like he weighed 100 pounds. He looked like a skeleton with his skin stretched over it. Jack! Thanks for stopping by. If you want to slap me or even strangle me, feel free. I deserve it, the sick man said in greeting. I just came by to make sure you know how happy I am that you're freaking dying, Jack said. If you look closely, you can see the smile on my face. That's one of the reasons I told my wife I wanted to see you. I thought my suffering would make you feel better, the patient admitted. It makes me feel good to know that I am making amends, even if I have to die to do it. You're talking nonsense, Jack replied. No one wants to suffer, and no one wants someone else to enjoy seeing it. What the hell do you really want? I did you wrong, Jack. I spent most of my life being an asshole. You caught me in bed with your wife, but you didn't kill me like you wanted to. When I came downstairs, I saw an old shotgun leaning against the wall. Laura only saw your ring on the table. To this day, I've never seen a man in as much pain as Laura was that night. I owe you, and I have no way to pay you back. My life isn't worth a damn. You can see that. The only thing left for me to do is die. That's going to happen whether you're here or not. I'm just offering you a chance to watch me die. It may bring you comfort, and it won't hurt me in the slightest, Harding concluded. How will your wife feel about that? Jack asked. I think it's pretty damn grim. I told her what I did to you and Laura. She understands that I want to do something to ease my conscience. My death won't bring me forgiveness, but it will make you feel better, so she agrees. I would ask you not to applaud when the Grim Reaper takes me away. It will hurt Beth, and she doesn't deserve that. Why did you do it, Chuck? You've had plenty of girls. Laura was everything I ever had or wanted. And you ruined it, Jack growled at the sick man. Because I was an asshole. Because I could. How the hell can that be the reason? It wasn't until I met Beth that I realized what an asshole I was, Chuck admitted. I didn't care that your marriage broke up. Laura meant nothing to me. That's how worthless I was. I'm ashamed as hell to admit it. It wasn't personal? Jack asked. You weren't trying to ruin my life or keep us apart for some reason? I've always wondered why you need a married woman when you have so many available. I hardly knew who you were. I didn't think about you, just that I was entertaining some guy's wife, Chuck admitted. She's a beautiful woman. That's all she was to me, a little married wife on the side. If you weren't so sick, I'd kick your ass, Jack threatened. If I wasn't so sick, I'd want you to do just that, Chuck replied. I've grown up really a little late. There's no excuse for my actions. I realize that now. A bullet between the eyes would have been too good for me. You miserable bastard, Jack snarled. I'd be doing the whole world a favor if I held this pillow over your face. True, but then you'd be in a lot of trouble. Killing a dying person is considered just as much of a crime as killing a sturdy, healthy person, Chuck reasoned. Why don't you just come in here when you get a chance? It's quite possible you'll see me going on a happy hunt. Jack had never been as angry as he was at this moment. This guy had ruined his marriage simply because he wanted a piece of someone else's ass. To Jack, Laura was the perfect wife, a woman devoted to him and willing to share the rest of her life with him. And then Chuck Harding decided he wanted a taste of another man's wife. I guess I'll take you up on your offer, asshole, Jack replied firmly. I'll be pissing on your grave in a few days, you bastard! Jack was true to his word. He visited Chuck Harding several times a week, though he didn't tell Laura or Kansas about it. He knew his intentions were unhealthy at best. When Jack stopped by for the third time, Chuck's wife Beth was there with a little boy. Jack nodded to the woman and sat down in the chair, but soon rose and left the room. It was impossible to rejoice in the death of even the most vile man while his wife and young son were nearby. Jack vowed to himself that he would not stop watching death. Harding deserved exactly what he got. The next time Jack walked in on him, Chuck was in a pensive mood. You left because my wife and child were here, didn't you? It's hard to rejoice in my death when you see innocent people suffering from it, isn't it? I'm here to see you die. I have no disagreement with your family, Jack replied. Even as he spoke, Jack realized he sounded pathetic. Was he really that kind of person? Chuck began to tell Jack about his son and what the boy liked. Then he went into detail about how he had met his wife and how she had turned his life around. Jack was well aware that Chuck was trying to gain sympathy. He also knew it was never going to happen. Jack stopped by to see Chuck on Christmas Eve. Since Jack had first seen him, Chuck had weakened considerably. This time Jack had a purpose, and he quickly got to the point. Chuck, I hate what you did, but I can't keep my hatred for you. I've thought it over and realized that the best revenge is to live well. I'm here to tell you that I will make sure your wife and son will never need help. You will die knowing that the man whose life you ruined is taking care of your family. I can see why you think you're getting revenge that way, Chuck replied weakly. You're not really good at revenge. I hate that I did that to you and Laura, but it somehow turned out to be a boon to my family. It's ironic. A despicable act secures the future of my wife and child. That's the best I could come up with, Jack offered. I won't come in again. I don't want to see you die or even suffer. There's no more of that. It doesn't give me any pleasure. You do realize you're practically telling me you forgive me, don't you? Chuck replied. You found the strength in your heart to endure what I did to you? Something no man can forgive. I didn't say that, but you can think what you want. I really don't care, Jack replied. Tell me this, Jack. I've hurt you in ways you can't bear. How can you forgive a miserable bastard like me, and yet not find the strength to forgive a woman who loves you the way Laura does? What have I done to earn your forgiveness that she hasn't? I saw the relief on your face when you abandoned your hatred for me. Imagine how good it will feel on your soul if you forgive Laura. Imagine having her in your arms, maybe having your children. Wouldn't that be better than punishing her? Screw you, Harding. You're the one who said I forgave you. I never said that. Not in so many words, but you said it, Jack, Chuck replied softly. I'm going to die soon. I'll die happy knowing that you were able to grant me forgiveness, and you'll take care of Beth and Charlie. You're very bad at revenge, Jack. It's not your strong suit. If I never see you again, please give Laura my apologies. Jack left the hospital furious. The stupid bastard thought he'd been forgiven. He wanted Jack to forgive Laura. When that happened, hell would be cold. As Jack drove, he thought back to his last conversation with Chuck Harding. The man had gotten to him. Jack had to admit it. He shouldn't have gone to the hospital that first time. When Jack got home, his driveway was clogged with cars. He had to drive down the street 100 yards to find a parking space. He had completely forgotten about the party Kansas and Laura were throwing. It was a Christmas party. The addition had been finished 2 days ago, and the furniture, including the huge double bed, had been brought in yesterday. All of Laura's friends, family, and co-workers were invited. Kansas asked many of her friends to stop by for a visit. He was still furious at the last words he'd said to Chuck when he pushed open the door and stepped inside. The guests turned at his appearance and suddenly fell silent. Laura and Kansas were serving drinks and hors d'oeuvres when Jack entered the living room. It was immediately obvious that he wasn't himself. Laura had never known him to drink much, but she considered the possibility as Jack circled the room with his eyes. As soon as his gaze fell on her, he stopped moving. "Uh-oh," muttered Kansas, realizing that her father was in a state she had never seen before. Jack finally took a few steps deeper into the room, but his gaze never left Laura. The silence continued as everyone watched the intensity of emotion on Jack's face mesmerized. "What's wrong, Jack?" Laura asked anxiously. "Do you really want to be my wife?" Jack demanded. Yes, I do," Laura replied quietly. "A wife gives her husband all her love." "She belongs to him, only to him!" Laura's father tried to intervene, but Kate quickly stopped him with a hand gesture. "I agree," Laura said as tears came to her eyes. "A husband takes care of his family. He gives them everything he has." "He deserves respect," Jack said firmly. Laura just nodded, completely oblivious to everyone watching her exchange with Jack. "A good wife won't complain if her husband takes her whenever he needs her, including right now, on that damn big bed." "Not if he loved her and she loved him," Laura agreed. "Right," Jack snorted, scooping Laura up into his arms in a quick motion. "Kansas, close the door behind us!" "Okay, Daddy," Kansas replied immediately, closing the bedroom door. "I'll be entertaining guests, so don't rush out on account of them." "What just happened?" Laura's mother asked. "Is Laura going to be okay?" "Oh, yes," Kate said with a laugh. "Sis is going to be all right for the first time in years." Only half an hour had passed when Jack and Laura struggled to open the bedroom door. They had just showered and put on different clothes. Laura snuggled up to Jack as their company began to banter gently. "That didn't take long," remarked one of Jack's equipment operators. "I hope the boss had time to finish the job." "He did very well." "Thanks for asking," Laura cooed and gave Jack a quick kiss on the cheek. "Jack, I don't pretend to know what happened between you and my daughter, but her mother and I are damn glad things are better now," Laura's father stated, holding out his hand. "Just don't do it again." Shaking his father-in-law's hand, Jack glanced at Laura before answering. "I don't think that can happen. Laura and I will be together from now on. Come to think of it, it was my idea for you two to live together so that Kansas's adoption wouldn't be challenged." Funny how nothing ever came of that threat, Kate remarked. I was interviewed at school a few days later, admitted a grinning Kansas. I told them we had a great family. Mom and Dad loved me and each other. I knew they would realize that sooner or later. I didn't tell anyone about it because I wanted us to stay together. Because of that, we moved in with my mom. Why were you so emotional when you got home, Jack? His curious mom asked him. I guess I was trying to determine exactly who I was hurting and why. Eventually, I realized that the pain caused by revenge is mostly self-inflicted. I needed to treat myself better. Laura will have to suffer with me for the rest of our lives.